Welcome to Old Iron Machine Works. In this video I will be finishing up a big 18-inch 6-jaw scroll chuck that I picked up at a scrap yard probably about a year and a half ago. And when I say the scrap yard, it's not something somebody just took into scrap. The owner of the scrap yard buys out, shops and stuff and whatever they happen to, have in the shop, and he'll set some stuff aside. And I was just happened to be at the scrapyard going through stuff and seen it up on a pallet. And anyway, I got it real cheap. It appears it's actually a 1972 Cushman chuck that appears to never have been on anything, mounted on anything. So I did acquire a faceplate, which you'll see in the video of me machining the faceplate and going through the chuck and cleaning it up. Here I'm just getting it tore apart, and you can clearly see where it did get moisture in it, but I think I got to it soon enough before we had any kind of serious pitting or anything, due to the water that got in it. One kind of small interesting note, just the 6-jaw assemblies weigh 67 pounds. And here's the faceplate I picked up. It's probably been about a year and a half ago when I picked this up from an older machine dealership, and they acquired it many years ago. And apparently, as you can see right here, it was 1 inch too small. They needed 16 inch, and this one was 15 inch. So it was brand new and sat in that crate for, I think, since 1996. Here I'm working on getting it separated without leaving any major witness marks in the process. So I'm trying to use some of my thinner blade putty knives. Screwdrivers, no. Not going to start driving in a screwdriver and then have marks that you can tell I've been into it. But it was pretty tight, and then there was one pin that was really tight, an alignment pin, and then you'll see in the video where I use shims, to get the shims in and then drive the putty knives in between the shims. And right there, that's the pin that was very tight, trying to get it separated. Here, while I gain a little gap clearance, I just increase the size of the shims, so when I'm prying on the other side, it's not closing the gap back up. This is showing the pin, and I just got to work on both sides of the pin, back and forth, because that pin goes into a blind hole, so you pretty much, this is the only way you're going to get it apart. Here I'm just showing in time lapse the process of just going with a thicker shim every time, back and forth. As I get a gap, I just increase the thickness of the shims and you know, keep wedging back and forth until I get it pop loose. Here you can see where I kind of caught it before the rust started doing any serious pitting or damage. Otherwise, the chuck doesn't really show any kind of wear patterns or anything at all that would make me think it was ever used. Here it's just showing some flaws in the casting, which doesn't really mean much. Here I'm just looking for any signs of any kind of wear at all from the jaws sliding back and forth, which, as you can see, there are none. Here I'm just cleaning up the adapter plate that I bought, and it is 15-inch OD, and I need to machine it down somewhere just over 9 inches. And the flange I'll be machining is, I believe, somewhere around maybe 1.125 inches thick. I forgot exactly, but it was a brand new L2 mount. And here the next steps will just be machining it off, trying to catch most of the chips. Got the cutter upside down because it does put off, that cast material does put off kind of a nasty, really fine grit powder. So I try to keep that off the lathe as much as possible. All right, here we got it back at my my home machine shop, and I got it mounted up on my big lathe, and I pretty much cleaned the taper and then stoned the spindle on mine, make sure there's no nicks anywhere, flaws or anything. It doesn't take much to throw the chuck out, and I'm hoping by the time I'm done getting this thing mounted, it will be as accurate as I could possibly have it. So anyway, any kind of chuck, when you're taking it on and off, you want to definitely spend some time, make sure there's no burrs or anything anywhere. And then here I'm just making up an adapter to go on the end of this inside mic, just so I can get a better measurement when I measure the diameter of the chuck. I've showed this before in a video, but that little teeny notch there, to get my height of my cutter, I just put that little bubble level on one of the jaws, you know, centered a bubble, and then you know, and then I know that little witness mark that I put on the chuck is where I kind of line up. And most cutters you want to fudge around a little bit, you know. Exactly dead center isn't always your best position. Sometimes you got to play it around, you know, slightly up or down a little bit. Now there's not going to be too many cases where I'm going to need to use this little adapter. So what I do is just put a little drop of Loctite on it, you know, to slide it in just to hold it nice and solid. And then just warm it up and pull it off and wire brush off the Loctite, and then you're back to normal. And I guess I should mention, when I'm using this adapter, I'm using it more like you would a snap gauge. Everything is measured with an outside micrometer. So I'm just using this to get a really good feel, you know, on the diameter that I need. And then I just check it with an outside mic. This clip shows best why I made the adapter. I don't have much of a lip. It's actually less than a 1/4 inch lip right there. So my 1/2 inch tube style inside mics are just too thick to give me a good feel. You know, so that's where this worked out good. I mentioned earlier how that machining it put out this little fine little powdery stuff. So here I'm just trying to protect, you know, the lathe a little bit from that fine powder. And I just got the vacuum going. Now this adapter plate's held on with 3 5/8 bolts on the inside area of the chuck. So I decided I wanted to go with a 2000 interference fit, just so I would have a really nice tight fit up when I put the adapter on, which you'll see later. I'll heat it up, you know, before I assemble it. But here I'm just showing with the indicator, you know, kind of stoning and cleaning it up and getting that as accurate as I can get it. Sometimes certain casts, when you machine it, it leaves a little, almost like a little fuzzy area, you know. So I just, when you see me with the stone, I was just barely knocking off those little high spots. And here I'm just taking a file and just kind of knocking off the sharp edges. Okay, I mentioned earlier that I have an interference fit between the chuck and the adapter plate. And here I just got some compressor valve parts as shims where I got them between it. And this shows really good where I kind of got it centered the best I can. But until I heat it up, it's not going to drop all the way on. So the shims on the inside are to try to keep everything pretty much parallel flat. And then now I'm just measuring up. I need to make me a transfer punch to locate the mounting holes. And this is one of those cases, if you don't have a transfer punch the right size, you improvise. Here I'm popping both halves of the chuck together just so I could stick it up in the lathe. I'm back at work, my day job. I do a lot of stuff there, you know, after hours. And anyway, that's where I'm spinning it. It's mounted up in a, I believe that was either a 10 or 12 inch chuck that's holding it. And I attempted to polish it with the belt sander, but I didn't get that great of a result. Just the fact that the chuck is pretty hard, and you know, sometimes harder materials, you know, just don't polish up, you know, quite as good as others. Here I'm showing the little buffing pad that I'm using. They're just little rubber fingers, and they just have a little abrasive material built right into the rubber, and it does a really nice job. That's a glass bead finish on the chuck right now, where I use an AA or AB glass bead material. And here I'm just trying to eliminate the swirl marks the best I can, but make it a little bit more presentable. And then here I'm just running around with the stone, making sure that I get all the little high spots, you know, sanded down. In a case like this, I don't really want to use like a precision stone, ground stone, because to me they're not aggressive enough. I like to actually see where the stone is actually cutting, and if I see a high spot, I actually want to, stone it all the way down, where it's gone. This is pretty much a typical pattern that you'll see with any kind of cast material. You're always going to have the imperfections, but all you do is you just want to have it flat. And here I'm going to go in and polish the pockets. Just kind of knock off the little high spots and smooth it out. And for that, I just have a small little fine flap wheel mounted in my little Fordham tool. Now most of these chucks have pretty much a seamless line, but just the fact of working it apart, I knew there was going to be some imperfections in it. So I went ahead and chose to just take a small little file and just barely break the corner, which when the chuck's together, what it will do is it'll give you a seam line that you can see, which is no problem. I still like the looks of it. Okay, probably the most critical areas that you want to get all the nicks and stuff off are this surface that mates up to under here, and where the adapter, which is right there, where that adapter fits up to here. That pretty much is going to determine, how accurate the chuck is. Everything else is pretty much cosmetic. And you can see this register here, I have a 2,000 interference fit. So this will be heated up and then the hub will drop on. They have a nice relief here, so any crud or whatever that happens to get in there, it has a place to go. So right now, I'll basically stone this where I can get a good visual, make sure there's no high spots. Now I tried not to edit too much out of this whole process of working on this chuck, and the video did get real long. I didn't want to chop much more out of it, so I ended up deciding to part it in two parts. So this is of course part one. I'm going to release part two at the exact same time. So if you watch this video and you want to jump over to the other one, you should be able to do that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll jump over and catch part two.